Hi, this is Mario and that's Marion van die Kerk from ABC Hansen Africa. Today we want to talk about an e-publication that we've published called How to Make Feed Milling Work. That's the third in the series of ebooks. First one was how to make small scale milling work. Second was how to plan a silo project. And now the third is how to make feed milling work. Just a little bit of context about the animal population in the world. The world sits with 1.55 billion cattle, live cattle, that is. Another almost 2.5 billion small stock, sheep and goats. Around 750 million pigs, of which incidentally 430 million odd lives in China, and then we sit with 26 billion chickens. So 3 chickens for every human, man, woman or child. Of course, seen in a larger context, we've got around 870 million farms in the world, of which 470 million are small farms of less than 2 hectares, and the remaining 100 million larger farms. On each and every one of those farms, there are animals.
Well, and of course, all of those animals have to be fed, you know. So the question is, how do we feed all of them? And there's various ways. Some of them will be free-ranging, just living off the land. But most farms, especially if you're running it commercially, you're going to have to feed these animals.
And you know, in commercial farms out here on the high veld in South Africa, we need to have a feed bank in winter. Grazing in summer is fine, but we have harsh winters with a lot of frost. So we need, and the same goes for the northern hemisphere, of course. So we need feed banks, and we need to produce licks and additional feed for those animals if we're expecting to them to be able to give us a calf every year or several offspring every year. We need feed.
Yeah, and that's relating to just the cattle and small stock. Of course, chickens, poultry, ducks, all those, they have to be fed the entire year. Pigs as well. There's no chance that they're not feeding throughout the year.
The major aspect of this is it's fine to buy feed. Some people prefer to just buy feed, but of course your cost in buying ready-made feed is high, and at most these are marginal businesses. The profit margin on cattle in South Africa, and for that matter the rest of the world, is small, and it's of more importance is it is constantly fluctuating. So in good years we've got people holding back on animals and the prices rise. It's also related to the price of maize and soybeans and so on. So, but generally it's not a gold mine that you're sitting on. It's marginal business. So we want to make sure if we do feed milling that we're able to increase that margin to the maximum.
And for that reason, ABC Hansen is offering a wide range of feed milling options, feed milling equipment options. Our capacities start from around 300 kilograms per hour of milling, mixing and pelleting up to 10 tons per hour. And we have a range covering poultry, pigs, ruminants, making concentrates, making full rations, TMRs, total mix rations, or DMRs, the dairy mix rations. So we can include high roughage, we can include no roughage, high energy pellets. We can include molasses in the mixes. So depending on what your operation is, course, we're not just offering these to farmers, but also to commercial feed milling companies that will be able to produce these feeds. So basically, all the feed mills have the same common components or essential components. The essential components would be first bulk material storage or raw material storage. That will depend on what type of feed you're going to be making. If you're making a ruminant feed for cattle and goats and sheep and the like, you're going to need to be able to store your roughage material, which would be grass bales, lucerne, alfalfa, straw stuff, materials like that. And then also, of course, your energy sources, which would be maize, depending on where you are in the world, maize, barley, wheat, sorghum, and then also your protein sources. So the protein sources would be typically soybeans for most cases, but also fish meal or carcass meal or blood meal.
Range of those.
Yeah. So the first thing is to get that sorted and to do the storage on that.
Very important here. We don't have to just look at those products that are commercially available, those ingredients that are raw materials that are commercially available. Very important is to look at what you can gather in your own environment. So we've seen in Namibia, for instance, where we played a big role in converting invader bush into bush graze, as we call it, as the cellulose components of feed. The lovely thing about a ruminant is it takes that cellulose, and that can even take the form of newspaper, and turns that into a viable feed for itself. So the prospective or the farmer should look at what is available in his area and then adapt his ration to use those materials. In the Highveld we have a lot of hay, so we use hay instead of bought-in bagasse. Bagasse leeks are made by the sugar companies. It's not available. The excess bagasse is used in furnaces and in boilers. They're not interested in selling bagasse. So we have to have another cellulosic material that we can use in the feed. So we look what we have. It could be peanut shells or a million other things.
Yeah, then the second stage of that would be the batching stage. So after we've stored the materials, we have to be able to make up the recipes to get into our feed. So the recipes will be made up typically by animal nutritionists who will analyze the components that you want to use and provide you with a mixture of these components that will give you the correct nutritional value for the goals that you want to achieve when using this feed.
What we're trying to do in this little book is to give a guide to the small farmer and the small operator, as well as those people wanting to venture into commercial feed milling. So we try to be not too technical. We try to keep it simple. There are many doctoral theses about these issues, which your eyes close after a while and your attention wanders.
With ABC Hansen, we've got you pretty much sorted in the storage compartment regarding just soybeans, maize, your energy and protein sources. We can do the storage on. It's not always necessary to have silos for storing your raw materials. Depends on what the capacity is that you're doing and what the availability is that you're doing. So storing the raw materials in bags or in bunkers or in heaps in the warehouse, that's 100%, that's completely fine as well. So then for the next stage after the storage is batching, so to make up the recipes. So in the how to make feed milling workbook, you're going to find some basic recipes in there as well, depending on what the animal is that you want to feed.
And the raw materials that's available.
And the raw materials that are available. Yeah. So in batching is basically weighing off the raw materials, to make sure that your components are in the right relation to each other, so that you have a complete feed. After batching, the batching can be done basically in two ways. Either just having it in bags, putting them on scales, making sure that every bag is the right weight, so you're putting the right weight in there. There's another stage to batching where you can automate the batching, so you have batching bins that feed into a weighing bin where all the ingredients are weighed out automatically using an automatic batch controller that's part of your motor control center. And there you get a very repeatable batch and very accurate and with no human intervention. After batching, then the fun really starts. Then we go into milling or mixing. Depending on what your preference is and what your method is, you are going to be taking all the material, milling it through a hammer mill or a roller mill, depending on what the feed is that you're making, just to get everything down to a homogeneous size, so that everything mixes nicely and the whole feed is of the same size, which eliminates a little bit of the selective eating as well. If they can't visually or tactilely discern between the different parts of the feed, they are less likely to feed selectively from your feed.
The heart of a feed mill is the hammer mill, generally. Either a hammer mill, roller mill, or disc mill, or plate mill. 99% of feed mills uses hammer mills. Of course, we've got Hubert, the Hippo hammer mill range available for you. From a tiny 1.2 kilowatt hammer mill, right up to a 90 kilowatt mammoth hammer mill. So, the pygmy, the baby, the 1, the 1.5, the 47, the 57, the 69, the L63, and finally the mammoth. So for all your milling, feed milling needs, we've got the hammer mill to suit you. Keep in mind, you don't need to mill everything down. So you may want to have a system where you have already milled products on one side. That you scale and you batch. And then you only mill the raw materials that requires milling, like the maize and other materials. So that frees you up time in your hammer mill. You don't need to mill everything, and your capacity obviously then increases. So there's a choice you got to make about batching and rather milling and mixing, or mixing and milling. You may decide to mix everything and then mill everything down.
Yeah, you can do that. So ABC Hansen is able to offer milling solutions on the feed milling all the way down from 100 kilograms an hour using the Hippo Pygmy up to about 10 tons per hour using a Hippo Mammoth hammer mill. Then also we have roller mills that can be used as crackers and crushers.
And remember, we're talking 10 tons an hour on a single line. So what happens is, if you need a larger capacity other than that, feedlots, people like that often need larger capacity, then additional lines are put on.
After the milling and after you've got everything down and fine, then we go to mixing. On mixing, the reason that we want to mix is you want to take all those ingredients and just get them together and mix them together so that everybody at the end of the line is feeding the exact same product.
And keep in mind, you've got micro ingredients there. So your vitamins, minerals, and other micro ingredients makes up a very small portion of the total. It could just be 1% or 2%. And you've got to ensure that those micro ingredients are properly dispersed throughout the ration. So you need good blenders or mixers. We call that mixers or blenders, doesn't matter.
For blenders, you have a couple of options there as well. Again, depending on what the capacity is that you want to do. So from the smallest blenders If you're doing 100 kilograms an hour, 200 kilograms an hour, something like a cement mixer is completely fine. A concrete mixer is completely fine to use. Going up from there, we offer typically paddle mixers. Paddle mixers we have available from 100 kilogram per batch up to about 1 ton per batch.
And keep in mind, we're talking about per batch. On these paddle mixers, they are highly efficient. So it doesn't have to spend more than 7 or 5, 7, 10 minutes at the most in the mixer. So with 100 kilogram batch mixer, you can easily do 4 to 5 batches in an hour.
So don't look at the capacity of the mixer as your limiting capacity there, because you're able to do multiple batches per hour on that.
Your main thing there is to get it into the mixer, get it out of the mixer as quick as possible. If you want to do continuous batching or faster turnover on your blender.
That's right. Then the next option that we do, so neither of these mixers will do any cutting or shredding of material. Then we do a line of mixers which is mainly used in dairy rations again, dairy and cattle rations again, which are horizontal or inclined horizontal spiral mixers, which have blades on them, so that will cut up your roughage for you. So you're able to put in whole bales of hay or lucerne or grass into these mixers, add your silage or your maize or bran, and make a complete mix from there.
These are large capacity, between 12 cubic meters up to 50 cubic meters per mix. They move relatively slow. A typical mixing time on a roughage ration would be maybe 45 minutes. Yeah, half hour to 45 minutes. But then you mix a batch of 18 cubic meters or even 50 cubic meters. We must just go to vertical mixers as well. We also do vertical mixers. And let's quickly explain the difference between vertical mixers and horizontal spiral mixers. Vertical mixers has a spiral running up vertically. Fairly high capacity, quite fast, but very power hungry. So a typical 3.5 ton vertical mixer is going to run on something like 75 to 100 kilowatt, whereas the mixing time is shorter. It also has the ability to cut up raw materials. Versus the inclined horizontal mixer. On an 18 kilowatt mixer you have?
Yeah, on an 18 cubic meter you have 22 kilowatts, two 11 kilowatt motors just running at low speed.
That's a big advantage. Very big advantage is power consumption on mixers. Even paddle mixers are power hungry.
Yeah, a 1 ton mixer will use 22 kilowatts. Then you can either be finished with your mix or you can take it further. So if you're just making a loose feed or a mash type feed, after mixing and milling, you're done. You can bag it off or take it out in bulk in trailers and you go feed it to your animals. If you decide to make pellets, then we take this mixed and milled feed, and we take it to the pelleting press. Now the advantages of pelleting are well known
and numerous, and you can really read about that in the publication. But it is an advantage, a big advantage for any feed milling or livestock farmer.
Yeah, so for pelleting, basically what we're doing, taking that mixture, sometimes depending on your area and your raw materials, you might have to add some water to it to get it to pellet. For pelleting, you typically want it somewhere between 12 and 18% moisture, depending on your ration. The other way to add that moisture is to add steam into the mixture. The advantages of steam are a lower wear, higher capacity from your pellet mills, also creating a harder pellet because of the higher gelatinization of the starches in the pellet. Pellet steam, the disadvantage of steam is it is very power hungry again. You can generate the steam either using coal-fired burners, gas-fired burners, or electric boilers. All of this is very high power consumption.
But keep in mind, you've got around 20% higher capacity on a pellet mill when steam product is introduced. So yes, it has a cost, but it has to be offset against the pellet mill's running cost.
That is true. After the steam conditioning or after the water adding, you're going to go into the pellet mills. Now, pellets can be produced depending on the animals that you want to feed. Anything from 2mm pellets for small chicks and day-olds up to 10mm or 12mm pellets for cattle and for game, and everything in between. The most pellets that we're seeing being made by our customers are ranging between 4, 6, and 8mm, with the highest majority being in the 4mm range for poultry.
From pelleting, we go to cooling. Pellets have to be cooled. In a small milling operation, pellets can just be left in open bags after pelleting until it's cooled. In anything larger than that, you need a pellet cooling. That helps to increase the hardness of the pellet, maintain it hard, less crumbling on the pellets, and generally just a better pellet.
ABC Hansen offers two types of pellet coolers. The one type of pellet cooler is a counterflow type pellet cooler with a grading system below it. So you're always going to have broken pellets coming through the line, and some dust and material that didn't pellet through the pellet mill. So after the pellets have been cooled and they've hardened, it just runs over a screen, just removes all the broken pellets and all the unpelleted material, so that you have a nice quality product that you're going to be sending out. If you are just using the pellet mill and the feed for yourself on farm and you're not selling it, the grading is not necessarily that important to add onto it. So we have another option, which is just a single flow pellet cooler that does not have the grading on it, where we're just cooling down the pellets quickly to be able to enable you to get it into the bags quickly and get it off to where it needs to go.